The views expressed on this program are those of the commenters alone. They do not represent the views or opinions of Valley News Live, our parent company, or our advertisers.
Welcome back to Point of View, where we present all sides of the story, including yours. Tonight, Chris has us thinking pretty hard for this segment. Now, take a moment and think about how hard you work every single day. No doubt you do. Now, do that again another 76 times. And that's how many days you have to work to pay for something you don't even see. And Chris is in tonight to argue you probably don't even get any value from it. Chris from the Chris Berg Show on AM 1100 The Flag. Chris, what are we talking about here?
Well, we're going to get to that in just a moment, Stephanie. First, I've got a very special guest sitting with me in the hot box tonight. I want to go back to this payroll tax cut deal that was cut late last week. First off, Congressman Rick Berg in the hot box. Thanks very much for joining me, sir. I appreciate it. Last week you were on my radio show.
Thanks for having me in the hot box.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Won't get too hot tonight, but it might get a little hot. But so last week on Friday you were on my radio show, and we talked about how, look, Congress, I mean, they're fed up with Congress. You guys have got an all-time low approval rating of 11%. I don't need to remind you. But then last week on my radio show, you said
I thought it was only 9. Are we 11?
Okay, you guys just got a little bump to 11. So, but last week you said this.
What's happened in Washington too long is they've done things behind the scenes, just the leadership and the public's been kind of out of it, as well as a lot of the members.
Question for you, and actually twofold. One is, what goes on behind these closed doors? What kind of horse trading is taking place? And two is, what makes these public servants think it's okay to forget about the American people?
Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm serving right now, because so much was done behind closed doors. I mean, you look at the president's health care bill. I mean, because that wasn't done out in the public view, there's all kinds of problems with it. What happened this last week, here's how it's supposed to work. Let me back up. In North Dakota, the House would pass a bill. It would go to the Senate. The Senate would take the bill up. They may change it, and then they would pass it. If it was different, it would go back to the House, and the House would say, you know, we agree with that, or we don't agree with that, and if we don't agree, we're going to have a conference committee. So they'd appoint people from the House, people from the Senate, they'd sit down, they'd work out their differences.
But I mean, if these guys just making buddy-to-buddy handshake deals and saying, hey, I don't care about the American people anymore? Or?
Well, that was the approach we took last week. That's the exact same approach like we would in North Dakota. What happened is the Senate didn't agree with our bill, so they passed a 60-day short-term stopgap thing, which is another problem, and they left. And we formed a conference committee, and they said, no. So, I mean, the problem is the public, I think, is so used to being told, here's how it's done, and it's just done with a few people behind the door. They just expect that to happen. We have to change that. It worked for 200 years to have, you know, committees meet, have the House and Senate take up legislation, meet their deadlines, pass them, and come up with solutions.
I want you to address something else. There was a headline last week that said that you and Senator Hoeven were not on the same page on this payroll tax deal. True or false?
False. You know, I mean, Senator Hoeven did not have the opportunity to pass a one-year extension of this payroll tax. That was defeated in the Senate, and so his alternative was to do nothing or do a 60-day. So he supported the 60-day. But, you know, clearly, I mean, he and I both feel in North Dakota we need long-term solutions. 60 days is not a long-term solution, but the tendency is to kick the can down the road and not make solutions that are going to get our country back on track.
I want to talk about some of the specifics in this piece of legislation. One is, okay, there's a tax cut. If I said this to you, we're having a cup of coffee, what would you think about it? There's a tax cut in this. The Dems aren't funding Social Security like it needs to be funded. And oh, by the way, there's a pipeline carrying oil down across the United States of America that's going to help with energy independence, jobs, and possibly national security. It sounds like a Republican piece of legislation to me, doesn't it to you?
No, absolutely.
So why is the Republican leadership so bad at media messaging? Because if you look at the media, it sounds like the Dems won.
Well, you know, again, I can't answer that. To me, we need to get back to the regular course. The public needs to understand, here's how we're going to do business in the future, and it's going to be messy. I mean, that's the way legislative process works, but you get good decisions. But, yeah, I'm disappointed that the way it was put together didn't seem like that was the way that people understood it.
I want to talk about a piece of legislation that you've introduced called the REINS Act. I want to create some context first. Stephanie alluded to it. Right now, the average American today, I'm going to pull up this graph for you. The average American today is working 77 days to pay for federal regulations. The next one shows the incredible increase in the federal regulatory budgets. And then on top of that, right now, I recently read that the federal regulations cost the American economy $1.75 trillion. Now, I create this context because I want you to talk about the REINS Act and the importance of it, please.
It's just critical. I mean, my mission was to bring what we're doing in North Dakota to Washington. And the RAINS Act, it's like reining in a horse. What it says is a bill passes and an agency has a rule. And if it's a major rule that's going to cost over $100 million a year, $1 billion over 10 years, before it can be imposed on the public, the House and Senate would take an up and down vote on it. Makes sense. One check and balance. We passed that bill out of the House. It's sitting in the Senate with 28 other job-creating bills sitting there like cords of firewood sitting there waiting to be taken up. I hope they do. This is what we do in North Dakota. When we have a bill that passes, it goes to a department, might be the health department, might be the ag department. They come up with rules. But before those rules are imposed, they go through administrative rules. And this committee says, well, this is common sense or not. And that's why North Dakota runs so well, I think, is because you have this check and balance between people that are writing the rules according to the letter of the law, but also that local common sense comes into play. And, you know, it's probably one of the top two pieces of legislation that I've seen that can transform America, get people back to work, and get trust in our federal government.
Would ultimately the RAINS Act then rein in the EPA?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I want to play this for you. This is President Barack Obama on the campaign trail in 2008. Recently, there was this Mercury ruling with the EPA that's going to put a huge burden on coal plants across the country, raise everybody electricity rates. And you go, why would he do that? People are unemployed. There's the most people ever on food stamps right now. And yet, it's intentional. This is President Barack Obama back on the campaign trail in 2008.
Of a cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket. Even, you know, regardless of what I say about whether coal is good or bad, because I'm capping greenhouse gases, coal-powered plants, you know, natural gas, you name it, whatever the plants were, whatever the industry was, they would have to retrofit their operations. That will cost money. They will pass that money on to consumers.
Comments? I mean, it's intentional.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is why it's so hard to get our economy going. We need the exact opposite approach to energy. And we need domestic independence. And 85% of our energy right now comes from coal, oil, and gas. That's not going to go away overnight. And if you just jack up the price by regulation, which is, again, what's happening, that hurts business, it hurts job growth, and it creates this cloud of uncertainty over everything.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about this. Let's talk about the U.S. Senate race coming up. Obviously, the Iowa caucuses are a week away. If you can just give us an update as to what's happened up to this point, and what are you looking at for the first quarter of 2012?
Well, I mean, it's been exciting. I mean, what I enjoy about this campaign year is people are going to get more engaged and pay more attention to what's going on. There's a lot of people that are getting in the race, and this, quite frankly, is a critical period. I mean, the next year to 24 months are, you know, we have to get our country back on track. We have to do it quickly. And so this is going to be a key 10 months left.
Congressman Berg, thanks for your time. I appreciate it. You got a lot of work coming your way. Stephanie, there you have it about what all these costs are. And I guess that's my question to you tonight, Stephanie, and obviously the people tuning in is, look, is the federal regulations, are they actually serving the American people, or are they a hindrance to the American people? Again, I'll let you know, you and I both are working 77 days in order to pay for these federal regulations, and you can't even see them. I don't know if we're getting a lot of value from them or not. Stephanie?
Well, we'll see what people have to say about that, because I'm sure there are people on both sides, whether they're Democrat, whether they're Republicans, independent, or just fed up with maybe paying that. We'll see. But you can chat with us live right now, Chris. Thank you so much. You can go to 630pov.com. You can tweet us. Our hashtag is 630pov, or you can get in touch with us on Facebook. What do you think? Do you feel the Environmental Protection Agency is serving America, or do you think that it's hindering America? Here's what you're telling us so far on Facebook. Kathleen says this: serving and protecting. She thinks they are. But Peggy says strangulating. Elizabeth, here's her take. Considering that most corporations cannot be trusted to clean up after themselves, though it would be lovely if they did, someone has to make sure they're doing it. Imagine the shape of our rivers, our lakes, streams, and groundwater without them. Jeannie says the same thing. She goes, I agree, for the most part, they are serving. But Sheila says, no, tell me what they are doing to protect us. She's not on the bandwagon, but Therese says 50-50. Sometimes they go way too far. Gerald, he says that they're hindering, and he agrees with Jordan. And our very last one here, John says, it would be really nice if they actually did what they were created for. Well, thanks for your comments on this. It's not too late for your voice to be heard on this or other topics. You can go right now to 630pov.com to talk with us. You can tweet us your comments. Our hashtag is 630POV, or you can get in touch with us on Facebook. Our Facebook page is Valley News Live. Coming up, they are the real eyewitnesses to history. Some of the best amateur video you do not want to miss from 2011. Stay with us.